Hello there, fight fans, and welcome to Boxing During Dinner, episode 44. I am your co-host, David Berry, reporting from the Rochester studio, if you will. It's actually a nice 70 degrees outside today, so if Alex and Armando feel like coming to visit somewhere warm that's not South Florida, you come to the rugged Northeast and enjoy some sunshine up here. Before we get to episode 44 and the Juan Ma versus Salido rematch that everyone is talking about for a number of reasons, I want to give a special thanks to all of you who made episode 43 such a huge success for us. We're right now on the cusp of 7,000 views of that episode, and if you haven't seen it, go to boxingduringdinner.com, check out episode 43. It's coverage of the Brandon Rios versus Yuriorkis Gamboa press conference. By now, a lot of us know that Gamboa was a no-show to that press conference, but what happened was a breakout brawl between Rios and Richard Abril, the WBA interim champion, and a whole bunch of drama ensued there, and who knows what's going to happen now with the April 14th date. Will Gamboa show up and actually fight, or is Rios going to stick with the date and fight someone else? Time will tell. But in the meantime, let's get to episode 44. As I said, the Juan Ma Salido rematch again in Puerto Rico, and again the same result, a shocking, in many ways, TKO by Orlando Salido, and once again cracks the chin of Juan Manuel Lopez. And to me, I'm going to come out and say the biggest thing about this right at the start is puts the future of Juan Ma's career in doubt. And I'm going to explain why. And in the article I wrote here for boxingduringdinner.com, I mentioned in the very first line, I'll read it to you word for word, that let's get this right out of the way, Juan Manuel Lopez is an awful defensive fighter, just awful. You can't correct bad defense when you've built your entire career on powerful offense. And if that's going to be your bread and butter, which it was for a strong period of time, people felt that Juan Ma was the rising star at 126. It wasn't Gamboa. It wasn't a lot of these other guys as well. It was Juan Ma. And unfortunately, Salido shattered the mystique of that in their first fight by taking Juan Ma to the total brink and knocking him out in the 8th round. And I predicted that Juan Ma would learn from that, come back with a little bit more of a disciplined game plan rather than trading with Salido and trying to use his power in a smart way in the second time around, maybe block some of the right hands that were his undoing the first time. But what I didn't expect is that Juan Ma was going to come out as gun-shy as he did. And regardless of what the judges' scorecards read at the end, and those who haven't heard, 2 judges had Juan Ma ahead by 2 rounds, and 1 had the fight even at the time of the stoppage, which I think is outrageous. But thankfully, Salido didn't allow it to get there. But Juan Ma was gun-shy, and he came across as a fighter with a lazy jab. He wasn't sitting down on his power punch, which is that left hand from the southpaw stance, and he relied to trying to counterpunch an overly aggressive fighter in Salido, and had very little success, except for maybe in round 9, with the exception of round 5 when he dropped him on a beautifully timed counter right hook. But outside of that, this was not Juan Ma's fight. He fought into Salido's hands, and Salido landed some punishing shots throughout this fight that literally had me saying, I can't believe this guy is standing up to this type of punishment. So I'll say it again, Armando, I believe, sure, people don't want to close the book on Juan Ma, but as an elite fighter, I'm sure he's going to come back, probably move up to 130 pounds, fight a bunch of no-names just like Adrian Broner has. But his time as an elite fighter and his window of opportunity, I believe, is now closed. Armando, what do you think?
You know what I think, David? I think that, and hello everybody from Boxing During Dinner, all our fans. But David, what I think before I get to the thoughts on the fight is that we need to show our people some love. You know, a lot of guys have gotten on our case on YouTube on the comments saying that we don't talk back to our fans. So I wanted to say hello to a couple of them. Jorge Luis El Coquis, who thought it was a good effing video. Bro, thanks. So what's up to you? And also, I wanted to address this one, Global Awareness 13 on YouTube, who said, besides the Olympics, which are a commercial joke since the 80s, I'd have to say the least, Cuban fighters have not done anything worth remembering. Keep your word next time, Gamboa, and for now, keep fighting old Mexican washed-up names and try to create yours. Well, I guess he must have missed the career of Joel Casamayor, who fought great fights against Chico Corrales, among others, and also one of those washed-up Mexicans Global Awareness is talking about was Orlando Salido, who destroyed Juan Ma Lopez, David. And I agree 100% with you. Juan Manuel Lopez's career as a legit contender, as a legit fighter, is done. I don't think he'll ever be a world champion again. At least, not to the world champion degree. I mean, there's a billion belts, which he could win one of them. I mean, you got crappy-ass guys right now fighting for world title belts. So Juan Manuel Lopez may be a belt holder, but he will never be a world champion again. And David, the interesting thing is that just a couple of fights ago, this guy was a top 10 pound for pound fighter. When he beat Ponce de Leon, who's still a good contender, I'm like, the sky's the limit for this kid. This kid's a good puncher, Puerto Rican, marketable. He had a lot of stuff going on for him. But David, I'm gonna take you back it was about a couple of years ago. I went to Puerto Rico to do some interviews. Wilfredo Vasquez Jr., Jesus Pavon, Ivan Calderon, one of them was Juan Manuel Lopez. I think the fame of being world champion got to this kid's head because I go to the gym. He was more interested in a photo shoot than he was in training and talking to legit media. You know, he was just there posing for the camera, was wearing Armani sunglasses and stuff. Yeah, enjoy your money, enjoy the fruits of your labor. But when it comes to hard work, you know, don't let that go by. And I'm sure he worked hard for this rematch with Salido because there was nothing more than he wanted than to recapture his title and be a world champion once again. But you got to adjust your game plan, brother. He came into this fight, like he said, David, you know, you thought he was going to adjust a little bit, and he didn't. He just came out. It seemed both fighters came out to knock out the other one. For Salido, it makes sense because he knocked out Juanma in the first fight. For Juanma, don't trade with Salido. And the irony of all this is that if he would have boxed maybe the last couple rounds, he would have won the fight because, David, as you said, he was up on the scorecards, which is another laughable thing because after the fight, Juan Manuel Lopez tells Jim Gray, which I'm in no way, shape, or form a fan of Jim Gray for the stuff he's done over the years. I mean, he's been a good reporter at times, but at other times he's just plain annoying. Most of the time he's plain annoying. But when he told Juan Manuel Lopez, "Are you sure you want to go ahead with these accusations?" The guy's saying that the referee was gambling, and that's why they stopped the fight. It wasn't because the guy was wobbling all over the ring and had just received a 5-punch combination and been dropped and been beaten throughout the whole fight, but because of the referee, because he had a gambling problem. For God's sakes, Juanma, I mean, you look like an idiot when you come up with these excuses. Thank God he apologized, but that was more probably his people telling him, look, man, you look like an ass. Watch this video. You got knocked the F out, and now you're apologizing. You know, now you have to apologize. Don't go out and come up with excuses. But David, what I see for Juan Manuel Lopez in the future, the best fight I think he can make personally is a turf war with Wilfredo Vasquez Jr., who's a 122-pounder. He can meet him at 126. They could settle their business. They don't like each other. I know Wilfredo Vasquez Jr., he's never been a fan of Juan Manuel Lopez. In fact, he told me a long time ago when I told him I thought he was a good fighter, he said, Armando, you know what? Juan Manuel Lopez is not as good a fighter as people think. He's going to get knocked out soon, David. Wilfredo Vasquez was right. I was wrong. A lot of people were wrong, and now Juan Manuel Lopez is left scrambling for a career and a future that once was. But David, before I go back to you, this is Boxing During Dinner, and the beautiful thing about dinner and being an adult, because you know when you're a kid, David, and I'm sure your mother would make, hey David, you know, we got meatloaf, and you're like, Mom, I don't want to eat meatloaf. I want to eat, you know, SpaghettiOs, and she would probably beat you and, you know, not let you eat. And you know, the same with me. My mom would cook jarabe encendido because yes, I am Cuban American. She would cook jarabe encendido. I didn't want it, but I'd have to eat it because that's what Mom made. Well, Mom, now I'm 31 years old. I eat breakfast for dinner. I got a Starbucks sandwich, my coffee, a croissant. I don't want to eat jarabe encendido right now. So, David, back to you, and we'll continue this conversation.
Well, of course, the fight game continues on, and this coming weekend on St. Patrick's Day, March 17th, the return of lineal middleweight king Sergio Martinez facing off at Madison Square Garden against Matthew Macklin. And Armando, I think this is a unfortunate situation for Martinez, and there have been rumors and rumblings that this may be Martinez's last fight at 160 pounds, but not going up in weight as people might suspect for bigger names. There's actually the rumor that after this fight, should he retain his title, that he would move down to 154 pounds, which arguably has some of the largest star talent in the sport right now. Maybe even if Floyd Mayweather decides to stick around, he's probably thinking that should Mayweather beat Cotto, as many are expecting, that Martinez-Mayweather could be the fight that we see in November. But before we speculate too much more on that, let's talk about the fight at hand. Macklin is 28-3. He's got 19 knockouts to his record. He's largely unknown to a U.S. fan base. But in Ireland, where he's from, and that's the reason he had a little bit of billing here, he's probably best known for his most recent fight, which was a split decision loss to Felix Sturm for one of the middleweight titles that many believe that he actually won. And this is one of those situations where a fighter goes in and has a losing effort, but in fact comes out looking like the bigger guy because he has a better opportunity in front of him, and it's a way to kind of right a wrong in the eyes of many. But the reason that Macklin is chosen for this fight, again, he's got some recognition among people who follow the middleweights all around the world, but he is a come-forward fighter, and that's something that Sergio Martinez doesn't want to get into a boring affair like he had against Darren Barker, a fighter that just didn't make Martinez look good in the way that Martinez fights. He needs a guy who's going to come forward and bring the fight to him so Martinez can drop his hands, kind of duck around, pop shot from different angles, and look sharp. And that's how Sergio Martinez is going to once again capture the attention of the general public. Martinez is 37 years old. He has shown very few signs of slowing down. We constantly bring this up with Mayweather. When is he going to get old? I don't think that we're going to see Sergio Martinez get old against a guy like Matthew Macklin, who for the most part has built his career on fighting club fighters more or less. But I think that Martinez is going to capture probably a pretty impressive knockout here, maybe later in the fight, and give fans a reason to see why he was so exciting a few years ago when he was taking on everybody. And now that he's got his title, he can't get a fight against elite guys. I think Sergio Martinez wins this fight by knockout late in the fight. Armando, what's your take? And what do you think about Martinez dropping to 154?
Well, David, when Luke Skywalker and the Two Live Crew sang "Fuck Martinez," I don't think that we're talking about Sergio Martinez, because Sergio Martinez is a great fighter, one of my favorite. And as an objective person, on the show we offer up objective opinions. I don't hide the fact that two of my favorite fighters are Sergio Martinez and Carlos Molina, who's going to be fighting James Kirkland, but we'll talk more about that next week. Sergio Martinez, the reasons I like him is because he's a fast fighter, he could hit, and he's a good defensive fighter as well. And he's exciting. He brings a lot to the game. And I've always said, if there's anybody that could challenge Floyd Mayweather, give him the toughest fight of his career, possibly even beat him, is Sergio Martinez. I don't think Pacquiao beats him. I don't think anybody else beats him. Cotto definitely won't beat him. But Sergio Martinez could. He at least has a chance. I think he'll walk through Matthew Macklin in this fight. Sergio Martinez is way too good for him. And coming down to 154, David, I don't know how that'll work for Martinez, because I think he might have drained himself a little too much in the 154-pound division. And moving up in weight, we saw more power come from Sergio Martinez. A little more hand speed against 160-pounders. And coming back down, I don't know how that's going to affect him. But the big money is at 154. If he moves up to 168, what are we expecting? A fight with Lucien Bute? He might fight Carl Froch if he beats him. Andre Ward. What's the value in these fights? He comes down to 154. He could fight Pacquiao, Mayweather. He could, Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. if he stays around the 160 division. Canelo Alvarez. I mean, the possibilities are endless, David. And those are big money fights. And that's what you want if you're Sergio Martinez. Like you mentioned, he's 37 years old. Not a lot of room left in that career unless, he's going to be like Bernard Hopkins and fight till he's 47. But there's not a lot of room left. He's not 20-something. He doesn't have that time to make all that money in fighting other guys. So he probably will come down to 154 unless he could get the Chavez fight. And then we'll see, David. But I'm excited for this fight. I like Sergio Martinez. I like watching him fight, even though I think it won't be a hard fight for him. And I'm also interested in next week's fight, which you'll mention what's coming up next week, David. But a lot of good boxing. And also don't forget this Friday on Boxeo Telemundo, Glenn Donaire, Norito's older brother, he's going to be back in action. So check that out, David.
Well, as always, a great take from our little guy, Armando. Don't forget to come back next week, episode 45. We're going to be talking about a big fight weekend on March 24th. On NBC Universal, we're going to have Zab Judah taking on Vernon Paris at a crossroads fight for Judah and possibly a large stepping stone for Paris. And then on HBO, the doubleheader with James Kirkland and Carlos Molina as the undercard and Eric Morales and Danny Garcia in a 140-pound fight for Morales' title as the main event on March 24th. So be sure to check back. Boxing during I haven't even been drinking. It's actually kind of early. boxingduringdinner.com. We're going to have blogs up there, a lot more information for you guys to check out to keep you interested and engaged with us more throughout the week. You know we're on Facebook, you know we're on Twitter. Please stay active and talking to us. Retweet our content, share it with other people, and spread the word about Boxing During Dinner. We're coming close to 1 year of Boxing During Dinner shows, and it's been a great ride for us, and meeting a lot of you through online and through actually in person, all over the place. So thanks very much for being a friend of Boxing During Dinner, and we'll see you next week.